So, why do we have the concept of a soul? I'm going to begin talking about how the soul experiences Earth. So, the soul is, the way I talk about the soul, is it is the branch off of the original energy. And if you're curious about the original energy, please have a look at my videos. Ask me in the comments. But you probably know if you're listening to this. So, if there's a branch, let's say, for example, before you become, from the POV of a human, if that branch comes from an original energy, then it's going to be a very clear-cut branch, but it could be so many different branches that go. And so, depending on the life that you're living and depending on which energies specifically you are streaming all the time, you may focus on a specific branch and identify with that branch. But the soul is that creation of a branch. So, we think of it as a separation, but it's a branch. It's another little twig that comes off of the tree. So it's not separate, but for a human, it's helpful to think of separation. So if you want to think of it being taken off, I usually say it's been taken off, and then also there's a version that's off and also within. But in this case, let's just say it's a branch, right? So, the soul, like I said, is that creation of that. It's when that thing happens. A soul also could be two trees coming together and sharing a branch that comes off, which is like, as a human, it would be like a child kind of situation. And it just keeps going on and on and on. There is another way that I'm going to really quickly cover, because it's a whole topic on its own, of creating a planet, which is a place of that. It's a copy, but it's a long-term copy, where you can think of the game when you're a child with the parachute, where you pull it over and you sit on that parachute. It's kind of that motion energetically. And the energy that does this gives their full energy to it, and it germinates and creates a new set of rules and things like that in the style of that energy. Not always, but sometimes they are created as kind of a portal place, which is a place to be streaming from a planet. So let's say it's Earth, for example. It might need another celestial sphere that's like a quick shortcut. That's one reason. Another reason is to create an avatar planet. Again, if you want to know more about avatars, I'm going to go into detail. But anyway, so that's basically with the soul, that kind of thing. So that's, when I say soul, that's what I mean. Original energy can be your soul, and it could also be just your original energy. So let's say, again, like I said, if your original energy found a way to distribute their energy onto Earth, and you're in one of those, your direct one that you will identify with is your original energy, and sometimes all of the things in it, and you might have many interest, blah, 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 I personally am this, so that's why it comes naturally to me, but it's very complicated, so I could see how people are like, what's going on? But that's why a lot of people will go through phases, and they're like, oh, well, I am an alien. Oh, no, actually, I'm a god. And it's because they're finding all their pieces and things like that. So anyway, it's not clear cut. If you're very interested in your own thing, this is my specialty. Book a session with me and we can get more into it. I also have little readings that are, a bit quicker. There's different prices, but with smaller amounts of different readings. So go check those out. Now, back to the soul. So now that we're talking about the soul, we know, we're talking about the soul, but what about experiencing Earth? So we talked about how planets do the thing where they put like a thing around them, kind of like I said, like a parachute. And like I said, this is a rough explanation. This is a topic on its own. But what happens when that is established and other energies would like to come to Earth? We're going to focus on Earth, not other planets, because we're on Earth, right? So we're going to start with how each type of soul or energy or piece, depending on what it is, will come and express themselves on Earth. And for the sake of being, kind of like a timeline so that our brain doesn't hurt, just keep in mind that there is no timeline. It's for our brains. So that, because we observe time, we go meet people at a certain time, we wake up at a certain time, that stuff. So we still will observe time in this, but just keep in mind this whole time, all time is now. And it might make it confusing, but this is the best way to get this information across. And yeah, if you have questions about that and it freaks you out, again, I'm here to help. So when they come in, this is important to know for later when we get into the different types of things that go on. We're going to start with water. So when an energy comes and they come to Earth, and so basically when an energy comes in any way and connects with another energy, there will be a reaction. And in this case, there's a reaction, and the energy is so big, it's an original energy. It's not a copy, it's as is, it's humongous. It's made of billions and billions and billions of beings within it. And it comes to Earth and it expresses itself as all kinds of beings and water, and it takes over the entire planet. And if a being was already on there creating things and doing stuff, which we'll talk about in a second, that would create a lot of anger and frustration, correct? They would just be like, what the heck? Like, I just created these little beings and now all of them are flooded and they can't live in there. I didn't create them to live in this water. So when giant beings come like that, it had to happen for it to become a problem. Again, remember, this isn't linear, but because those dimensions that we're talking about, they exist still, because all time is now, and beings are still getting filed into those dimensions. So that happened, and the original energy of Gaia decided to, because she's the organizer of Earth and all the systems and nature and things like that, she will organize the nature and everything. But anyway, and nature is its own thing too, but we won't get into that yet. So she made sure that there are different sections on Earth of dimensions, so that when those beings do come in that are big like this, it will go into there. When these things happen, when any energy is coming through or being streamed, it affects everything. When people say we're connected, this is what they mean. So energetically, it's very obvious that we're connected, but physically, people don't see these things. They don't see that when a big energy comes through in that dimension, it's still going to translate in the others, maybe in a very soft way, like some rain, or some beings are going to wash up on the shore, lots of whales or something. Like, something is going to translate like what happened in the other dimension and all the various places. So that's something to keep in mind every single time. This happens with everything. When people do certain things that cause and effect, this is one of the laws of nature on Earth, the cause and effect. So cause and effect goes through dimensions. And this is what, when a lot of spiritual speakers talk about things like this, they say, oh, well, we need to make sure that the nuclear things don't go off or things like that happen, because if they do, we're going to be in so much trouble, because, it's like they're going to, set off all these things, and it's going to affect, everything. And they didn't have enough information. They didn't go deeper. Like, what are they affecting? It's because they're affecting all dimensions. It's going to affect everything. It's not going to just, because people just think of one earth as in, like, there is one earth, but it's, I mean, it's not one. If you think about it, it's one as in, like, the energy, but like within, but there's other dimensions and places, like, you know, different places. There's realities and realms and things like that, which we can talk about later. So back to the energies coming in huge. Then this is the first step of, again, not first, but for our brains, of creating dimensions and places, so that if another one is, you know, creating these things, and this incoming energy is so gigantic and it's going to take it over the entire earth, it needs its own dimension to do that. So there is a dimension that is very playful, and they're going back and forth and doing this. And even if they're upset about this, they're going to have to find other ways, which we'll talk about those energies that do find other ways. Okay. Number 2 is to create on Earth. So that is who I was talking about, that they already were starting things. There are some things that are native to Earth, and there are things that are not native to Earth. So all animals, unless the animals are mistaken for something else, all animals are of Earth. And so when we say creating on Earth, it means that the energy is coming from Earth. So it's like picking up dirt and making, and it's actually clay, and you make a pot out of it, and with fire. So like you're basically making, you know, from Earth, and you're co-creating because you as a being are not fully from Earth, right? So that's the whole thing that's going on there. So these energies are, a lot of them were the Fae. They brought energies, like little energy things, to do stuff. And this is why the Fae are known for everything's kind of an alien, right? They are known for magic, because magic is making something, from nothing, meaning like there's nothing there and they're creating it. So they had the idea of and respect of the nature already there. So some of it is their creation with nature, because nature has its own intelligence as well. And some of it is not. Some of it's like things they brought, and we can talk about that in a second. So that's kind of and there's also some energies in stories that we know about building beings and things like that. This isn't always the case. And you know how we think of humans, and we're always obsessed with humans and things like that. There are other beings that are we don't even know about. Like they look completely different, and they behave kind of like humans, but not. And they're more animal vibes, as in like stewards of the earth, and we're going to get to that in a second. So in this, you know, when this is happening, these energies, every single time they create something of Earth, they are a mixture of the energy of the being who's creating it and Earth. So they will not be streaming like how we stream, which I'll talk about soon, humans and stuff. They will be only having the information of everything that's ever happened on Earth and the energy that is creating them. So this is one of the reasons why humans are very easy to adapt to the one God thing, and to think of heaven being one thing, one possible thing, because a lot of a nature that was like collaborated with, that's what would happen. They would only have what they know of Earth plus their creator. And so this is what happened with, like I said, it doesn't mean that we deep down think that. It's just that when someone presents that idea, we're like, oh, maybe, you know, and we're like, okay, yeah, it doesn't seem like ridiculous. Now it does if you have more information about things. But if you have less information, it doesn't seem that wild, because at one point the beings on Earth have that. And that's another thing, is it doesn't matter who you are or what species you are. If you're on Earth, you have access to Earth, everything that's happened. So that's something that to keep in mind with that too. It's not like our genetics are just human, or our ancestors. They are connected to everything. You have the key, because it's not really like a body. It is a little matrices that you've created on a matrices. It's just so many different things. Or like a little planet on another planet on another planet kind of thing. So, the next is bringing creation for Earth. So, for example, if there were so many collaborations, let's say there was already some plants happening, and a lot of them were starting to evolve, because evolve is basically when the energy has just created it and they're done and they're moving on. So evolving is like after, what happens after. It's kind of like, I know this is a weird example, but it's like when you have a child and, you know, the child grows up and has their own life. It's kind of like that. That's what evolution is. So evolution is like basically just, yeah, the children living their own life, and adapting and growing and all that stuff. And, you know, there's other things as well that can happen, which we'll discuss when we talk about the Anunnaki and our human story and stuff. Okay. So when they bring these creations for Earth, this was a very popular thing to do. So remember when I said that the soul that would come, or sorry, the original energy that would come, and it was so big, and Gaia had to add different dimensions so that they could be filed into there when they come, right, through these portal things. This happened for when they were creating as well. There were some issues that happened. There's a story in my practicing with energies. I think it's Lilith's story. So if you look up Lilith on YouTube, it's probably the easiest way to watch the videos. There's 2 parts, and it kind of discusses that. Also, I might have done a video of one of my art pieces when I talked about roses. So, for example, I can talk a little bit about it, but it's not really for this. But anyway, so there was a moment when something... Oh, it was also... Wait, was it just Lilith? Yeah, I think it was just Lilith. So what happened was she basically helped with the way energy works in the body. And like I said, there's very different things in evolution of what has happened. This is like kind of, like I said, all these things are happening at the same time. So people want to see it in a historical thing, but this is not historical. That's the problem. Because these are, it's kind of like when things are in beta kind of vibe. It's not the full thing of what's going on. So the first way, because the thing is the reason why I say this is because when I get to the Anunnaki, this is why we look different. Like we have different things, like every time we're born, we look different and things like that. And why we stream energy and stuff. Whereas this was just keeping energy in a body like this. And apparently they have different things going on. It's complicated. It's just basically it's different. But anyway, so bringing these creations happened. Obviously, there were these Fae beings that we call the Pillars. Tatum and I named the Pillars. That basically hold everything. They're in all the different elements, and like so water, fire, all that stuff. And there's more that we don't even know about. And they are the building blocks and the pillars of basically Earth. And so they have already created things like, you know, there's rocks, like their own creations. And they usually were Fae. But when that thing happened where it was, the deity doesn't want to be named, but it's in the Lilith video if you want to watch that. And you can find out who it is. Because they're different now. They're different, so they don't want yeah, they don't want it on this. So if you are curious, just go watch the video. But anyway, the energy was slipping out over and over again, and some issues happened, and basically Gaia put more restrictions. And the restrictions were how much energy could come into a body. So this is where we're getting to the point where how much of our soul can be on Earth. Before anything goes, beings were coming to create things, they were huge, that kind of stuff. So she started putting restrictions, and some of the only ways that you could come was to bring plants and other things too, but we're just going to start with plants. Almost like a gift, and they call it, I can't remember the name, but it was like the gifting, let's see. I can't remember the gifting era. So you know how there's all the different eras of like when plants have roots, and then plants have this, and then plants have this and this. Oh, they were bringing insects as well. So basically, they brought insects and plants, and there was a mixture of things going on then. So you either could bring plants, and you were like, you had a whole thing going on where you were going to work with nature of how it's going to progress, why it's here, how is it going to be helpful. And they're showing me, obviously it wasn't like this, but they're showing me like a lab where they're sitting together and they're kind of drawing up a plan and, figuring out how it works together and the trajectory of where it's going to go and things like that. And like, guessing what's going to happen. And so there was that going on. And so these were like horticulturist kind of vibes. And they were really interested in working with what nature already had and enhancing it and bringing things. And it was kind of the ticket to get to Earth. Like there was, it was like when people go on a work visa or they work somewhere, they have to have a reason to go there, like they have a job already, whatever. This is like their thing. And some of them, they created, and this is where it got complicated, they created that thing that already exists on their planet or wherever they're from, but bringing it to Earth, it's not sure that it's going to work or not. And so that's part of that planning process. Some of them, they used it as a vehicle to experience Earth and be around this time and to just explore. And this is a lot of these energies wanted to just explore. They wanted to see what their energy could do when they get there. But when they realized that they couldn't go, they're not big enough to go to that big one, the one that is all water. And they're too big to be in any of the other beings. And so they picked plants. And so Lilith's one was a rose, and she was and the thing about plants is the way that they are energetically are kind of, it's a bit like time traveling. So she can see out of all the roses, and all time is now. So every single time another thing happens with energies, another being is created. So the one that went into the roses exists, and then there's Lilith that people know exists, and then there's the original energy of Lilith, and there's just so many different versions each time something happens, each exploration. The story that Lilith talks about, there's a different version of her with that. There's like personal stories I know about her. So that tells you about how much energy she holds. So there's a part of her that is in those roses, and you can just see time throughout. Anyone, as long as roses are around, she's there, basically, if that makes sense. So it is a way to view, and the way she described it in the video is really cute. So that is what happens with the bringing the creation. So she brought that because it already existed. It was someone else's creation, and she wanted to be in it. So she wanted to bring herself in it. So that's kind of like what would happen if, like, let's say it's not that it's not compatible, but it's not her creation, so she wouldn't be able to modify it, but she could give her energy to it, if that makes sense. So instead of it being her planning, because she's like a horticulturalist, she gave her energy to that plant, So it could adapt and integrate and, have the energy to be what it is, if that makes sense. Okay, so that was number 3. And what they all have in common is that it's their way of holding energy, if you've noticed. I'm always talking about holding energy. Whenever you're in doubt about what's going on, just think of how something holds energy. And that's what I mean about beings. So when someone's talking about an alien, when someone's talking about a god, when someone's talking about, like me, talking about original energies, when someone's talking about Earth, a planet, or even crystals or an object a human made, it's very important to think of how it holds energy and if it expresses energy. And I have more videos on this, especially if you go to Patreon, in the Mind, Body, Spirit of harmonizing that. I talk about that, and that's the place to go to learn more about that. So when we talk about holding energy, plants, animals, humans, fae, avatars, jinn, aliens, they have access through the aliens have access through our personal energy and also specific realms, our type of human origin story. Okay, so we're going to start with plants, animals, and humans. So, sorry, not humans, because we'll do that at the end, because there's so many other beings. So plants hold energy, and I'm going to be very quick about this because I want to do specifically dedicated things to these. But plants are very similar to humans. They're the closest, actually. You can think of them like a little web, and they're connected in a net. And the way that they stream energy through this little net is like a highway. And when they do this, they don't hold on to the energy. It just passes through them and goes to the next one. So their little energetic existence, whether they're physical or non-physical, because there's non-physical as well of all these energies on Earth, it works like a little, like a dot that brings it to the next piece, and each little dot creates a little web, right? And so they don't hold on to things, and they don't alchemize things. So that's what the difference is between plants and humans. The other thing is that the plants are stuck with their little web and whatever is around them. So let's say, to make it easy, let's say you're one little dot you're a plant, and there are 5 dots around you, and you have a little strand to each of those 5. Those 5 are constantly going to be giving you things. And so your actual interaction and identity and who you are is going to come through those little webs, those 5 ones that are around you. Again, there's probably way more than that, but we're just going to say that for now. And the secondary ones, they don't really have access to, but in a way they do, because it's constantly coming through the ones next to them, right? So they're connected to all of them, but they don't have access to the ones that are beyond those 5 around them. Like, they couldn't contact them. Like, those are the ones that they wouldn't really know anything. Like, they wouldn't know that much information. Now, if a human, so this is the expression part. So you know how that's how they hold the energy? This is the expressing energy. So if a human touches a tree or connects with a tree, they don't even have to touch it. They can talk to it or just look at it or do telepathy. And any being, it doesn't matter. When you interact with it some way, even picturing one from that you've already seen, because all time is now, you are connecting to that network. And since we work similarly and we can do anywhere, it doesn't matter which ones, we can talk to that. And what makes that tree, let's say that's a tree, those 5 that are around, that they're connected to, that are close by, will be the identity of that tree mixed with that area and type of tree, right? It'll be like whatever information is there. And that's what you're going to get first. It's just like humans with the layers as well. And then when you get really into it, like let's say you're like really, into it, you can go deeper and you can get more information. And if you get all this speaking, usually that speaking is you connecting to whoever originally either brought over the tree or created the tree or co-created the tree, or earth, basically. So it depends on the origin, right? So earth could be their original energy, or it could be that and another fae, or another planet, or whatever, right? And trees are more connected to planets than an actual being. So the being that made it usually is also a planet. I know that sounds wild. So when you speak to someone, that's why you can speak to them. Now, if it's immediate, it means that you have a connection to that type of tree, the trees in general, or those beings. So that's just a quick thing, and that's specifically about trees because all plants have different things going on. All right, we're going to quickly go because, like I said, you can see how big that information is. So now we're going to talk about the animals. So I won't go into too much detail about animals because a lot of it is very sad at the moment, but I'm going to be vague and talk about how they hold energy. So animals as a collective are little stewards of the earth. They are doing more than what we see that they're doing. We see the physical things that they're doing, and what we, like we even personify animals and say, oh, look, they're getting married or they're kissing, and we see those things. So the funny part is we think that the people doing that are silly, but actually the way that we see them working on stuff is also silly. It's good to understand it's the first layer, but we need to go deeper if we really want to work with nature, because they're the they're what keeps it together, right? And so when they're disappearing, it shows you that they're not needed, which is not a good sign. Like, they leave. So you can think of animals like their natural state is the soup kind of earth, like the energetic soup of earth. And they come out of earth to become physical, to be little, to do physical things for, what they already do, the energy work for earth. And they are of earth and from earth. And what happened was, there are some animals, there is space inside animals, though. And that space is basically something that not all animals have, because not all animals wanted to participate. But the space is in the learning teaching dimension, which I will talk about later. And they gave themselves to that. And that's kind of a bit sad, but I'm going to talk about it because it's important in the other one. But they have space. And when they have space like this, any being can come through as a message for certain things. Originally, it was the space that is provided is for any earth energies to go in and help, because the whole point of these beings is to help. And so if there is an energy that is specialized in a weather thing or something like that, they would go and become one with the animal to make something happen to help with the plants or something else, like whatever. There's so many things that they would do. It's like having something on the in the ground while you're working on a big project or something that you need someone physical. It's like, when they send things to Mars, or not Mars, whatever, a planet, to do things like a little metal vehicle, but they can't actually go there or whatever. It's like that kind of idea. So, and they create them for that. And they're supposed to be very temporary unless they are the boundary type, which is the predators, not all predators, but some of them. Or they are the food type for those predators who are keeping the boundaries. And remember, the boundaries are not just for their, people would think this, it's not just for the animals, it's for other things as well. That's something we'll talk about soon as well. So, that's just really quick so that we understand that difference, to know about holding. It just tells you about how important it is to understand holding. Now, Fae, we talked about a tiny bit already. I have more videos about Fae, and I specialize in it because of my energies, created a lot of Fae things and stuff. So if you would like to know more about that, I have some videos on Patreon in the first tier, and also I would like to share this, like the information with you if you have any questions. But anyway, so we talked about Fae already coming in that time where they were bringing things. And we didn't mention, it's okay, it doesn't matter. So anyway, so remember when we talked about the water taking over the planet and the beings being unhappy about their beings being like mistreated because, you know, they just created them and they don't have gills, so whatever, right? The same thing goes with these beings as well, the Fae. So basically the Fae were there to do all these things. A lot of them have worked on the whole thing of Earth. It's kind of like all these immigrants that have really put themselves and worked really hard in like doing things for Earth. And so they've built like lifetimes, and they all have different things going on with them, where some of them are energetic, some are not, and they're all really, you know, they really need to be there, right? But some of them, you know, the ones probably that were born here or things like that, from these ones that came, it's complicated about these ones. Some of them were taking advantage of the beings. They weren't all just human beings. There's all kinds of different beings, and they were humanoid-ish. And they were doing some horrific things. They also, if you listen to the first podcast, there's some things like the gods were doing as well. And so there's some crossover between the gods and the Fae, because they were both doing these kind of things, different kinds of things. And so if you watch, I can't remember who it is, if you watch the Practicing with Energies, it talks about this. Who is it? I can't remember. If you would like to know more about that crossover, let me know and I'll put it in the comments. I'm going to touch on it a little tiny bit though. So basically what happened was Gaia was again upset with what was going on with them. And she was like really freaked out about what was happening, and she knew that they needed to be in a different realm. And so she did this thing where it wasn't just Fae, there were other beings too, which we'll talk about. We're going to talk about the Jinn soon. Also had these issues. They had to go into different realms, and we're going to right now talk about realms. So realms are kind of like a side carriage. So like, you know, when you're on a motorcycle and there's a side little thing where someone's sitting, it's like that. And it's because of energy size. So these Fae, the size of their energy and the way that they, how much, you know, when you hold a lot of energy like this, not only the things that you get up to, but you have access to so much information, and you remember everything about yourself. And so you know how people think about us and beings forgetting things. It's not about that. It's about holding knowledge. So these humanoid animal-y humans only had so much information. They had, remember, their creator mixed with the earth. And so if things are happening and they're taking advantage of these beings because, you know, it happens. It might happen on accident and things like that. It's not fair. So there was this great division thing that happened, and it was very traumatic. They even, like that goddess that that's on Practicing with Energies, was created because of the pain that a lot of families went through of putting these beings in other in other realms. And realms are kind of, like I said, they're like a little sidecar. They are very much there. There's a lot of crossovers, and the crossovers exist because it's one of the inventions, because like areas, small little pockets and areas where you can be together kind of, because of some of these families. So this is why those overlaps exist. The cloud realms overlap because they're sick, and that's a whole nother thing. If people want me to talk about that, just let me know in the comments. So back to the Fae. So again, if you want to know more about how that happened, just let me know. But yeah, the reason why this division happened is it depends on how much energy you hold. So if a Fae had a family with a human or one of those humanoid beings, the humanoid being, the way that they hold energy and the way the Fae hold energy are going to have very specific different things. And most likely, they're not going to have the Fae characteristics, but they will have some things that were a little bit different. But remember, it's not a genetic thing. It's about holding energy. And so they usually are human. Like, they're usually just like a human, the way they hold energy. Like these ones that only have earth and things like that. But some were, like, they could do both. And that's something that is a bit, like, unclear. Again, if people want to know more about that, those beings were the ones in the video I did. I talked more about what they went through. They're very rare, but it's about, yeah, they're just different. But anyway, so the ones that could go to either, they're able to go back and forth, but there's some that they couldn't. They just all of a sudden, one moment their mom's holding them and the other they're gone. And like I said, the overlapping areas, if they did find each other, were like, those are the areas they went in. Another thing is, like I said, that deity was very active in helping them find each other and be able to live in those overlapping areas, because it was very, like I said, traumatic. Okay, so again, like I said, if anyone wants to know more about this, I'm sure a lot of people have other parallel lives, and this will click. Let me know, have a one-on-one with me. Okay, we're going to move on to Jinn. Again, all of these topics are there. I could talk about them for hours, so I'm going to try and make it quick. So the Jinn are a lot like the water that we talked about earlier that takes over, but instead of water, they're beings. So if we go back to when I talked about an original energy or a soul, a big energy, like huge, you can think of a circle with tons of beings, and they're constantly there. Remember all these branches. Every time they create a new one or another one gets created with that energy, it's a branch off of it. So they're within it, but they're also without it doing other things. So it's like an illusion if they're doing other things, but they're really still always within it. So it's almost like everyone has their own little computer screen inside that soul, and they just keep creating new rooms, and they're like remote viewing or astral projecting from that thing into these little realities. That's kind of how it is, basically. They just told me this now. This is actually what I'm going to say now. I think it's really helpful. So yeah, so the soul or the original energy, anything that's a giant energy, you can think of it like this huge sphere of many rooms, and each room is like you get your own computer screen each time you get created, and depending on what you're getting created for, you're gonna have different things. So yeah, so that's basically what it is. I'm very excited about that. That is something really cool. I'm so happy. But anyway, so I love good analogies. So the Jinn, when they come as is, and the way they translate on Earth are beings. And so they just not explode over, but there's so many beings all over the planet, and they're all, a lot of them are, very intellectual. And like I said, the water also has this too, by the way. It's not just water, it's like that. It's just how that one is. This one's just, maybe they're, it's an air type or smoky type of being, like in this case. And the thing is people try and think of Jinn as fire or smoke, and it's something like that. I'd say it's more like a vapor that is like purpley black kind of, but it's not, well, Actually, it is something that's on Earth, but it was created from that their combination. So that, like just like how the water happened, it's that. Okay, but anyway, so there's a whole, like I said, I would like to go into detail, but I can't because there's so much more to say. But these little beings, not little beings, the jinn are from that, and the energy is not. Usually this energy doesn't care, but anyway, this energy basically doesn't want to be named. I have a video about it. If people would like to know, I can also, talk about it in a session, or I will do specifically something about the jinn. But anyway, they were also, again, kind of taking advantage. The same story as the Fae. They're not the Fae. People think that because it's easier to categorize, but in a way they are, in the sense they aren't the same, but the way that they were treated is the same. But if you think about it, they're more like those big beings that are water, so it's more like how water got treated in their own dimension. But the difference is it's like the Fae, where it got put into a realm. And this is why in Islam there's a lot, or a lot of countries that study like Islam, they're constantly talking about how they see jinn, and they're in overlapping areas and things like that, and they don't know that they're over. I mean, actually, I think they know, actually. But they see them and they're like, oh, I saw one, oh my god, or they interact with them, and they have all these stories of interaction. And they're actually old stories before Islam, to be honest. I think most of them. And then they put it in Islam as a way to put a scary being or whatever. And so, just like if you go outside and, as a woman, for example, and you're going out at night and there's some creatures like men, there are little creatures outside that are, have some issues and they want to do gross things. It's the same idea. Like, these beings were they're very physical, so they were able to do whatever they wanted to do, and they had different agendas. They're just normal beings. Like, they're not, none of the, remember, no evil things, doesn't exist. They're just living their life, and a lot of the stories that we see are from the perspective of humans. And this is why I'm always very careful with these subjects, because no one has talked from the POV of these stories, from the POV of these beings. They're always from the POV of humans and how they think of them and their interactions and how they're scared and how they don't really know, and or that they say that they're made up, but it's all from the opinion of a human. So that's something that I really try to do, is to be careful and to make sure that I'm encouraging people to ask these beings themselves, because we're gonna just be going by humans. Because even me, I'm still I'm still having my own opinion from the beings talking to me. So I'm another human having experience from the beings telling me about those experiences. So I encourage you to be, every single time I'm talking, always to be inspired, for you to go look into these things. Because that's going to be the real truth, because that is, each time, you should get the information from them rather than a secondary source. And I know that's hard, and it's sometimes people, when they hear this, they're like, what is going on? But it will be a thing soon, I think. Okay. So now, I am going to talk about our origin story. Why we have humans, why we're like how we are.